welcome to Hey, Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Crack Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we've got another edition of The Deciding Point for all of you listeners, our weekly breakdown of all of the action happening across the Division I college tennis world. Of course, this week is a special show for a couple of reasons. A, we're inching closer and closer to the start of the 2022 NCAA tournament. We had a plethora of conference tournaments played out over the course of the past week. Plenty of fodder for us to discuss on today's show. But perhaps more importantly, we have a special guest joining us to help break down all of the action. And normally it's the college tennis holy trinity, myself, Matt Stakowiak, Chris Halioris on these shows breaking down all of the action. And joining me today, as he always does, is the professor, a post-prime Greg Maddox. It's our friend Chris Halioris. Chris, hey, great shot. It's weird to introduce you first. Nevertheless, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Both first and the shortest intro ever, which I can't hold the anticipation back. There has to be a tremendous intro coming now. I'll just let you take it away.
Well, this is why I'm trying to be brief and efficient, is because I'm trying to show off for the third member joining us here on today's show. And I have said this in the past in jest. Sometimes I think you listeners don't believe me, but sincerely, when I go back to 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, I think about some of the formative people I would follow, some of the early voices that shined a light on everything happening, not only in the professional world, in the college tennis world, when I'm young, in the American tennis world in particular. And one of the most devastating moments that has happened to me since starting, as a part of Cracked Racquets is finding out that a man I have followed for years, a man who has inspired much of the content you have heard on this show, a man who drops bombs with every tweet he sends out. That man is younger than me, and he is joining us on the show today. Of course, he is a man you know best as the Parsa Nemati, the white whale of this show in terms of guests we've wanted to track down. Parsa, hey, great shot. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you agreed to do this. How are you doing, my friend?
Excellent. Excited to join the boys and try to fill in Matt's shoes. Sick 'em Bears, go Blue Devils. He told me that's what and limit Gruskin's crazy takes. That was
No, you're short a shaved head. Like, that's what we needed to really complete the impression. But yeah, that was pretty good. And again, you are one of the founding fathers of college tennis Twitter. It's probably you, Bobby Knight, Colette Lewis. Like, those are three faces on the Mount Rushmore. If you want to put Joe Kelly on there, we can have that debate a different time. But obviously, college tennis, something near and dear to your heart. Just at the start here, because we do have the chance to speak with you, where does that passion come from?
Oh, does it turn into an interview now? Like, you're taking advantage of the opportunity. So just growing up, coach was Steve Johnson Sr., and with your coach's son being Stevie J, and the dynasty of the 4 years at USC, and obviously the 72-match win streak, and kind of seeing that up close, and like, wow, this college tennis is kind of maybe a little more fun than even sometimes the pro action. And then you see the futures and challengers and how close you could be with the guys, and just the levels just not that far off from the pros, and you see all these top-level college players make the transition. And Mr. Halioris is a big board, Mr. What do you call him? Mr. Nuno, NDB. So you develop these ties to these players, and you get excited for when they're on tour. And we saw Danielle Collins, we see Anderson, Isner, all these great players on the double side. There's a plethora of them, and we're watching future stars in the next few weeks in NCAAs.
Yeah, no, and obviously, again, I mean it sincerely when I say your information, your updates of these players, not only during the college season, but early on, you're following them on the ITF circuit, and you're following their results on the Challenger circuit. And in particular, because we're similar in age, you are younger than me, as devastating as that is, but the Escobedo, Noah Rubin through Francis Tiafoe generation. I know that's a generation you covered near and dear, and I'm pretty sure this question is going to come from Scotty B eventually, so I'll beat him to it. Over under 5.5 cell phones operating at any given moment, because for you to have the updates that you do, my friend, it is like there's got to be at least two burners.
Only one phone, but I think probably just I operate on all time zones, so don't sleep much. So
That's true.
there's no time zone.
Yeah, no. Well, how many bombs are you sitting on that you're like, well, these would shake some things up?
Ooh, we could just check the drafts. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, about a dozen or so relevant, very big ones, maybe half of those. I mean, tomorrow hopefully will be interesting. Transfer one, we got there's a few transfers ready to go, just waiting on a few things.
Are any of those draft bombs coaches and not players?
2 of them.
Oh, yeah, that's what we like to hear. We're teasing everybody now.
No, that's why I got to beat him to it. I just have to get a second source for all these things, and then I'm running. I'm like, the race is on. No, again, the reporting that you do, I joke about it all the time. You're the Woj. I'm just trying to get to Sham's level so that it's a fair race between us. I don't even know if
I know it's model after Woj, but I mean, I'm kind of becoming a Shams fan. Woj getting old. Maybe I need to change the name. Shams
Yeah, no, it's fair. I'll tell you this. If anyone's going to get signed by Clutch, it's you. Like, it's not me. So I think that's probably.
You could be Chris Broussard.
Yeah. That's good. Anyways, it is great to have you on the show here today. And obviously, you would have come sooner if I was just more diligent about scheduling a time to have you. And it's great to have you at this point of the season because obviously you've been locked in to everything that's unfolding. And look, we have conference champions named, and let's put that graphic on the screen now for those of you tuning in live on YouTube, as we are live every week, 7 p.m. Eastern time here on Thursdays to talk about the D1 men. And from Scotty B to Kevin Laracy, who says bombs away. He's happy to have you here, Parsa. Obviously, we appreciate hearing from all of you. And as I mentioned on the women's show Tuesday, we're going to do a mailbag next week. So be ready to send in those questions. But we're now at the point of the season where if you don't have conclusions drawn, you're going into this NCAA tournament blind because conference championships decided in 4 of the 5 Power 5 conferences. Big 12 champs going to be Baylor, who goes to Fort Worth, knocks off TCU. We'll talk about that on today's show. Florida, as hot as any team in the country. And if you're going to have a tier 1 team, you're going to knock off all the check marks, what you want. You want the pedigree. You want guys at the top. You want the singles depth. You want performances in doubles. Florida's done everything over the past 3 months, looking every part the role of defending national champs. They capture a conference tournament, which they don't frequently do this past weekend in the SEC. Of course, out west, chaos ensues, and USC may have won the title, but Washington won our hearts. We'll explain why here on today's show. Of course, in the ACC, Virginia very quietly has not lost in quite a bit of time. And how dangerous are the Who's? Are they tier 1? How good is the depth in their lineup, that top end strength as well? There's a lot of options, but what's the match calculus for Virginia moving forward? They got pushed by North Carolina. We'll talk about the implications of that today, get into the rest of the results. Yes, Chris, we'll talk about Liberty, I promise. And then we're going to have a fun conversation at the start that I think all of you listeners are going to enjoy. But of course, before we get to any of that, I have to thank all of you who have tuned in, week out, made this 2022 college tennis season so enjoyable. And again, to the coaches, players, fans that have been a part of this college tennis season, followed along with us, we're immensely grateful that you continue to tune in. We hope you will do so through this NCAA tournament, as we think we have some very fun stuff planned. But of course, a huge shout out to 2 of our sponsors who are the lifeblood of these podcasts. Of course, a huge shout out to our friends at SwingVision, who are at the forefront of all things artificial intelligence happening in tennis. And guess what? You can have access to all of those innovations on your phone, folks. All you got to do is download the SwingVision app today, and you'll have access to all sorts of data, whether it's from yourself or others. It's the most efficient way to improve your tennis game. You can learn more by clicking on the link in the description to this podcast. Use our promo code CRACK20 at sign up. You'll get $20 discount plus a 14-day pro trial. Also, massive shout out to our friends at Turner, who have been with us from the start, and again, synonymous with success here in tennis, whether it's the Turner grip, whether it's the big hitter silver 7-2 or string. Turner's got it all, and you can join the Turner team today by contacting sales@uniquesports.com. You mentioned we sent you. You'll get discounted prices, free samples. Again, email sales@uniquesports.com to join the Turner family. With that said, we are not going to start today's podcast with a recap of the conference championships. We are going to start today's podcast with a big picture conversation, because with the NCAA tournament coming up, inevitably, I'm going back to the history books. I want to look through what's happened in past years. Can it shed any light on what we may expect to unfold over the course of this season? And you go back, since 2010, we'll say, which is the relevant era of college tennis. And there's always been a guy, right? The guy on these championship winning teams, or propelling one of these teams that are top tier to semifinals, finals, NCAA title sorts of runs. This dates back. The most pertinent example in modern history is obviously the aforementioned Stevie Johnson, who from 2010, that back half of the season, even though he wasn't playing one, Robert Farah was, Stevie was winning everything. And then junior and senior year, literally, he won everything. 72 consecutive victories to complete his career, leads his team to 4 straight NCAA titles. That is, by every definition, what the guy is supposed to look like. After that, you get to the 2013 season. Jameer Jenkins, #1 singles player, #1 doubles player for an undefeated University of Virginia team. Now, you may say, but didn't he lose to Blas Rolla in the NCAA singles final? He did. He also wins the team title. He wins the NCAA doubles final. Again, yes, Rolla lost 1 match on the season, but when you're looking, and that's why I think he deserves a share of the guy status. But Jameer Jenkins was the best player on the best team, who at times, through sheer force of will, go look at the NCAA final, beats Novikov in straights. He and Max Steislinger clinched the doubles point at the #1 spot. He was the guy for that team down the home stretch. And I can hear Parsa in the background being like, well, actually, he would have lost to Labidas if he didn't roll his knee in that first set against Tennessee. And who knows what happens in the match then. But he was the guy. You're just wrong, Parsa. 14 and 15 are interesting. 14 in particular, Marcos Giron wins the NCAA singles title. He played #2 singles on his team. Clay Thompson, who at times was the #1 player in the country, won the national indoors. And, again, you have those two guys. Mackie McDonald, I've talked about that UCLA team enough. They didn't end up winning an NCAA championship. They lose in the semifinals to Oklahoma, which had, in my opinion, now the most underrated player of the past decade, Axel Alvarez for Oklahoma, Guillermo Alcorta. You also had Damajan in the mix, Hanifman in the mix that 2014 season as well. Ultimately, USC wins the title, but I don't know if there was a definitive guy that year. 15, Noah Rubin, you want to say, who loses in the NCAA singles final to Ryan Shane, but didn't lose much else throughout the course of that season. And, Nick Chappell, who will argue to this day, TCU probably should have made that NCAA final. Instead, Oklahoma does. Julian Lenz was in the mix. Mitchell Frank was the guy on that 2015 team. He was the senior. He was the nightmare out at the NCAA tournament, and obviously clinches the title for them over Andrew Harris. After that, Mackey, 2016. I think Petros is a very good example. 18, 19, sheer force of will. Blumberg, obviously, what he's done the past 2 seasons. We can get into the debate about 2017. But again, historically, you see who the guy has been. And more often than not, that guy is able to lead their team to a title. Now, you'll say Blumberg didn't, but he did at the national indoors. And Chrysokos didn't in 19, but he did in 18. And Chris, we were at that national indoor final in 2019 in Chicago. They were in the final because Petros Chrysokos said, hey, guys, we're making the final. Like, Barr, you're going to win. And Borna, you're going to win. And if we drop doubles, Melios, you're winning. Okay. Like, that's our 4th point. And we saw it in action. That's what the guy is able to do through sheer force of will, drive his team to victory. With all of that said, and I promise I'm going to let you talk, Parsa, and you, maybe not you, Chris, but definitely you, Parsa. When we look at this 2022 season and heading into the NCAA tournament, is there a definitive the guy right now in college tennis? I'll start with you here, Parsa. I have a bunch of nominees. Well, first of all, do you agree with this concept of the guy?
First on the list of nominees that you made, I'm going to assume that you just forgot Holmgren. I noticed he wasn't on there.
Well, he was on my honorable mention.
He was not on there.
No, he's on the long form version, like the very long form
There were
version. I was
literally
like,
15 names on honorable mention.
The
no,
one he,
there's
the one he
there was-
forgot to send us, Parsa.
No, there's the 50 name list. There's the ones I keep
Oh,
to
the
myself
50,
that it's
okay,
just
okay.
like, that's not going on the stream. That's where Russ
I'm
was
like,
like, give me
half of
15.
Virginia's on here, but where's Holmgren?
Yeah, well, again,
We got the number 4 guy from Virginia, but no Holmgren. I mean,
look, here's the argument. Does the guy exist?
I made a list of 6.
Okay, Chris. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Parsa.
Boitan, Shelton, Holmgren, Chidek, Dostanic, Vassal, and then narrowed it down to, from that list, I wasn't sure who to narrow down, but just record-wise, Boitan singles 17-1, 14-5 dubs, Shelton 19-4, 15-7, Holmgren 16-3, 13-4, Chidek 17-1, 15-7, Dostanic 16-0. He's had a few unfinished matches, 21-7, and then Vassal 16-1, 17-3, just the spring. Those 6, like if you go through each of them, just how important they are for their teams. I mean, Holmgren with the Toreros, obviously Chidek in Washington, he's like an automatic point. Vassal just to lock up their singles, and then obviously number 1 in the country dubs. Shelton, as we all know, just incredible and helped the team win regular season and SEC tournament. Adrian just suffered his first loss only. And then I had Riffis, but he's dubs partners with Shelton, and Shelton's playing one. I'm going to choose someone from that team. I'll pick Shelton. And then Dostanic has just been a lock all year with Brad and dubs and singles. He's been made that huge transition from 3 to 1, and he's been great at the top of the lineup for the Trojans.
Yeah, all fair points. Let's show those nominees on the board now, because many of them are on my list as well, and I have plenty in the honorable mentions. I'll get to those names momentarily. Before I show my candidates, Chris, again, big picture. Do you believe in the concept of the guy? Is that a thing? Like where those guys are transcendent talents? And I have my list of names there. And of course, Cam Norrie was so exceptional. Lost 1 third set tiebreaker, his that 2017 season. Why I have the Virginia seniors in that 2017 slot is because, yeah, Norrie may have been the best player, but those Virginia seniors were the guys. Like it was, everyone was chasing them all season long. And if I had to pick one of them, I probably go with the guy who clinched both the national indoors and the NCAA championship in JC Aragoni in that. And I was having this discussion with a player who will remain nameless, but a former player who played very well in college tennis, who was making the point of, to be the guy, your opponent going into the match has to say, well, shit, I'm not winning this one. Like that's a loss. Like it's just a loss on the schedule. I think Nuno got very close to that status of the guy. I just think Petros was the next, one of those transcendent the guys. I think this concept exists. Like I think having those players can obviously be the sort, like you mentioned Shidek, it's a lesser version of this, but through sheer force of will, Washington is in the NCAA tournament, and that sheer force of will is Clement Shidek, who won singles and doubles every match he played this weekend at the Pac-12 tournament and was that sure thing. So, Chris, I guess to you, do you believe in the concept of the guy?
The concept, sure, but
my list, no.
Well, no, what I'll say is, I mean, if you really want to go the guy, it's one guy, and it's Stevie, and that's it. We're done. Like there's no guy since then, because if you're
Petros,
no, I mean, you bring up Petros, and frick, Nuno beat him in All-American finals that year. He couldn't close him out at indoors. I'll put Nuno in front of Petros.
Yeah, but again, we were there 2018 and 19. So I agree with you. If I were to really make the list, there should be less people on it. I just don't want to have every year blank because that's stupid.
But that, to me, that's the point is,
okay.
You have multiple people, and if you want to be the guy, to your point, you need to be the guy that everybody walks out there and goes, yeah, there's no chance we're beating him. We're down 0-1. And the only guy that you can say that for is Stevie. I mean, even guys that have lost 1-2 matches, they're in the conversation. Like if I was going to, to your point, if I was going to name one this year, I'd be a toss up between Shelton and Boitan. I'd probably give the nod to Boitan just because he finally lost to Famba, but that's his first singles loss. But I think it's kind of even, but they've lost matches. The only guy that I've ever seen that there was just no doubt he's not losing the match, period, was Stevie.
Is the 18-19 for Petros spring 18 and spring 19?
Yeah.
Because if you're the guy, I mean, I love Petros, but you wouldn't lose in the NCAA final, 6-4 in the third to Ito.
See, but here's where Stevie's on a different level, is that's why he's the highest level of the guy. And I agree with you. I think Petros of this list has the most solid. Well, Jenkins was really good in 2013 in that NCAA tournament. I think you could make a case he's on this Petros level as well, where again, in the biggest moments, you're right, 2019, he ran out of steam, but 2018 finals, he gets the win at 2, he and Barr get the win at doubles, and he wins the NCAA singles tournament. Then again, Chris, we were at the National Indoors. Petros won all of his matches, and I will never forget in the semifinals, Petros, after winning, there's no reaction from him. He puts his racket down. He goes and stands next to Melios, and he's like, hey, I am going to coach you through this match, and we are winning this match, and we are getting to the finals. Like, just look at me, do exactly what I say, and it's going to work. That's what the guy does. I think Blumberg at the 2020 indoors in Wisconsin, Chris, which again, we were on the call for, he was the guy. And yeah, he blinked in that final, in that number 1 doubles tiebreaker against Kucherman and Riley Smith. And that's probably why he's not tier 1 guy status like Stevie is. But that year, and then at the National Indoor Final last year against Baylor, where again, he gets the big win over Boitan and they take I think he's in that second tier guy status. Again, who's we're down 1-0. JC Aragoni in 2017, you go against Virginia, we're not winning 5, we're not winning 6. So that's why I have them as a group as the guy that year. And that might be a top tier status, but I guess I do agree broadly with your point, Chris. That would just be my art. I think there are tiers to it.
You don't have to have one every year. You're just not going to have one necessarily some years.
Yeah, that would probably be the best
side
compromise.
This year, probably Stearns and Navarro.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's probably both of them because they're both just not losing ever.
If Makarova was at 1, but I mean at 2 she doesn't lose, but if she was at 1, we could definitely call her the woman.
She'd be a tier 2, the woman. I agree with you. That's probably a tier 2. What about, all right, Chris, final word on this goes to you before we get to the 2022 candidates.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think the problem is right now, to be the guy, to me, if we go to and unfortunately, I think it'll be a semifinal this year if it happens. Say we get Florida Baylor, it won't be a repeat in the final because they're likely, they're almost locked into 2-3. They play in the semifinals. Who are you picking, Shelton or Boitan? I don't think there's a clear cut. I don't think anybody's going to clear cut say, oh, for sure it's one of them, right? And if you can't for sure pick one of them, then there's not a guy.
So I'm glad you bring this up. And I think, you know what, if I could go back, you're right, I would vacate the guy status in certain years. I know how stupid that sounds, but because Stevie is the most notable example, I think I would leave Jameer on the list. I would leave Petros on the list. And I would leave Will on the list because, again, we were there in 2020, Chris, and I'm going to have the 2021 final be the mulligan for him because I think he does belong there. This year, is there the guy? That's the question I had. And I have a lot of honorable mentions. I think the one who comes closest to cracking the list is Stefan Dostanic, who, again, just is not losing dual matches at the number 1 singles spot, has jumped up to that next level, an unequivocal top 5 player. You feel like, again, watching him go 3 sets in the final against Shidek is a testament to the fact that we talk about Shidek being on that status. Let's put my list now. I have top 3 candidates. I have Ben Shelton of Florida, Adrian Boitan of Baylor, and Clement Shidek of Washington. I have the numbers for all of these players here on the year. You look for Clement Shidek, again, 17-1, as Parsa mentioned, in dual match play. Clutch moments, though, this weekend. Gets a win over UCLA. Gets a win over Arizona. Gets a win over Oregon. With the, again, the dual match season, the postseason is on the line. He goes 3-0 in the first 3 matches. He's unfinished in the 3rd set with Dostanic when that USC match ends. When you are asking, you need his point, he has delivered this season. And again, it's not just him, but He is the lifeblood of getting Washington into the NCAA tournament. And it's the lowest level status of the guy, but they don't have Shedak. They're not going anywhere. He has propelled that team to the postseason. That needs to be in consideration. You mentioned Boitan, who loses his first match of the season against Famba in the Big 12 conference tournament, but he's not just doing it in singles anymore. He's also doing it on the doubles court, where he and Tadeusz Paralek have been excellent. Again, 12-4 at that number 3 double spot, 13-4 overall on the year. You've got him, and you've got Ben Shelton, who had one really bad weekend a couple weekends ago when he lost to Bama, and I forget who the other loss was that weekend as well. But outside of that, he's won 14 of his last 16 or 15 of his last 17, something crazy like that. And we saw what he did in the fall at the All-American. We saw what he did in the summer as well. He's clearly taken a leap, and when he is locked in, he is beating whomever he wants to beat. The question is, and I'm so glad you said it like this, Chris, if any of these guys go head to head, are you picking any one of them definitively? I asked that question to you first, Parsa.
Nope.
Yeah, it's that simple. And so is there a guy? It's tough. It's tough, Chris.
Yeah, I'm certainly not picking any of them definitively. I mean, if you make me pick out of the 3, I'm actually going to take Boitan. I mean, and here's the problem. I say I'll take Boitan, but if you ask me highest ceiling, best talent, I'm going Ben Shelton. I mean, it's just some immaturity probably. And, and the fact that you look at him and I think sometimes he just, he spaces out and gets bored. I don't know. He's clearly the best player on the court and somehow manages to lose a match. I don't know how that happens, but I think he's the best player. Does that mean I think he's going to win? Not necessarily. The guy that I think, from all around aspects of that will win, I probably go with Boitan. And Shedak, we just need to see more outside the pack, outside of the Pac-12. So that's going to be, really interesting. Hopefully we get to see some good matches in the NCAAs with him.
Parsa, is Clement Shedak the Nikola Jokic of this college tennis season?
The Jokic on the Nuggets?
Yeah.
He could just do everything you're saying.
It's again, there's some injured parts and it's not exactly a top seed, but he gets him to the playoffs and clearly this guy can do everything. I think that is the comp.
Or the Kobe on all those, I'm a Lakers fan, so all those bad Lakers teams.
Yeah, that's it. There he is.
But you got Jack Davis, Lumsden, Washington's good, and then the clinch was Arizona. 17-year-old freshman from France. I mean, that guy clinches that versus a senior. I mean, shout out to the whole team. They were pumped after that in Ohio, and it was awesome atmosphere. And to get that and then follow that up with the UCLA win, they definitely earned it.
He's the Michael Porter Jr. of that scenario, I would say. But no, I mean, again, I think it's right there for Shelton and Boitan to grab. If they go undefeated on a run and Baylor or Florida win the national championship, I think then they are propelled into that guy status with that sort of run. I agree with you. Right now, if the season were to end today, this year would be an abdicated the guy throne. It would just carry over next year and count for double. And I think Dostanic's right there. I think Kingsley's right there. Tracy. I actually think Adam Walton qualifies for this in 9 out of 10 categories, just not quite enough wins on his resume. But talk about a guy who, in terms of all the extracurricular things, he is showing up in the big matches. He is going at least 3 sets in the big matches. He epitomizes everything you want out of the guy. I just need a few more wins out of him. But no, I think if I could partner his extracurriculars with maybe Boitan's results, I just think that's the perfect combination of the guy's status. Nevertheless, it's going to be a fun postseason stretch, and that epitomizes kind of where things are. And with that in mind, let's get into what we saw unfold over the past week. We can talk about some results that actually unfolded, and let's kick things off with the aforementioned Adrian Boitan and what he and the Baylor Bears were able to accomplish this past weekend in Fort Worth. Tough draw for the number 2 seeds. They dealt Texas in their semifinal. Of course, it's only a 16 conference, so they start in the semifinals. 4-2 win for the Bears over Texas. That's a win that includes a victory in the doubles point. And, again, for this team, for them to get victories in particular in this match from Finn Bass, who put together a really good weekend of playing for him, a 6-6 win over Waldy. They also got a big victory from Sven La. Always tough to beat the Bears when La's getting wins in the lineup, of course. They also got wins from Teddy Perlek in both this match and again against TCU in the finals. 4-2 win for the Bears for the second time this season in Fort Worth. Teddy Perlek was your conference MVP, and after not starting the year in the singles lineup, he's been that sixth guy. It feels like we now know the pieces for these Baylor Bears. And I'll start with you here, Chris. You look for this team overall on the season. It's always worth mentioning Baylor Bears have lost just 3 matches throughout the course of this season, 26-3 overall. And of course, their losses, TCU, Tennessee, Michigan. I don't think there's any shame in any of those losses. When they win the doubles point, they're going to find 3 singles victories. The question is, do you have, and I asked Coach Woodson about this on the Mini Break podcast this week. He has stuck with his doubles teams all year long. There would have been pressure to change it. He hasn't done that. Bass and Law, 14-6. Mizuchi and Soto, 19-5. Boitan and Perlek, 12-4. They seem to have found the answer in the doubles point. Again, this team's hitting their stride. How are you feeling about the Bears?
Oh, I feel good. Unfortunately, the only problem I have is I'm not going to get to see the Florida Baylor final I predicted. There's no rematch there because that's going to be a semifinal. But no, I feel great about them. I'll be interested to see lineup submissions when they come for NCAAs because, the guy that we saw, early in the first half of the season in Miladinovich playing 4 has just been absent now. The question is, has he been sliding him down to where he's 7 and he could put him in, or is he leaving him at 4 and pulling him? I don't know, but either way, I like Teddy Perlek in the lineup. I want to see, and if it's the Teddy Perlek that we saw just beat the snot out of Kyle Seelig last year, that's the guy I want to see, right?
Yeah, Perlek, 13-2 overall on the season, 8-1 in his last 10 matches. Parsa, the big decision for them was, again, Bass, Miladinovich, Mizuchi, Perlek. Finn Bass is 7-5 at the number 4 spot, 18-7 overall on the year. If this is the combination, Bass, Perlek, and Mizuchi, who, by the way, they're now 23-4 at 5, 25-4 at 6. Spencer Furman, Charlie Broom, they're coming for your thrones. Is this team now, have you seen enough from the depth of this team that you feel as confident about them as we did last year?
Yeah, got the stats pulled up too. You're at 23-1, and then 23-4, 25-4, 1-5-6 are just been rocking. Dubs is solid, just 2-3. 4 has been a little iffy. I mean, you don't got the great Nick Stakoviak, but shout out to Peru. How good must that have felt to clinch against your old team in Fort Worth? I'm sure that must have felt well for him. And then Finn Bass, he's been putting the work last few years and wasn't really in the singles lineup. And now not only is he's not just a dub special, he's rocking in singles. And these aren't necessarily, Finn isn't exactly a new piece, but to step up when called upon and kind of be a lot more reliable. Not exactly trusting the Serbian freshie.
Yeah.
Chris has been kind of hesitant to trust him all year. And the Mizuchi at 6, you would think, he dropped just 9 games total versus, who is the against
he played I was gonna say Jirasek, right? Yeah.
But both times it was 3-1 and then 4-1. So that matchup he's got covered. So yeah, you don't have Brooms, Stakoviak, Furman, but you got as good as 3 guys as you can find, and you can always count on 1, 2, 3 to hopefully show up.
Well, to your point, Parsa, again, match calculus-wise, 23-1 at 1. You feel good about Boitan against just about anyone. If Perlek's going to play this way, you feel good with him at 5. Mizuchi's 15-2 at the 6 spot. That's 3 points. And again, in their losses this season, they dropped the doubles point to Michigan. They dropped the doubles point to TCU. I believe they dropped the doubles point at home to TCU. They dropped the doubles point on the road at Michigan, to Tennessee, and to TCU. I believe in all 3 of their losses this season. I mean, here's the question for them. And this weekend, Sven Lah and Matias Soto showed up in a big way. And Soto is, earns the clinch 3 sets over Juan Carlos Aguilar for the Big 12 title. And Sven Lah was up in the breaker at 3 as well. You look at these two guys from a record standpoint. Soto 13-8 overall, Lah 15-6 overall. Here's the thing. And Chris, final word goes to you here. If Baylor splits those points, like again, they don't need both guys to win. I think they just need to split those points throughout the NCAA tournament. If they're doing that, there's your margin for error. And that's why I still feel like this team has that ceiling, still has a little bit of ceiling to reach. That's why I felt that way all year long, because they haven't been clicking. But this weekend, again, Lah with the big win over Texas, Soto with the big win over TCU. Lah was right there against TCU as well. That's why I think this team enters the postseason particularly dangerous after their third consecutive Big 12 title.
Well, sure. I mean, unless you are Florida, TCU, and maybe in Ohio State, a very
and Michigan.
And Michigan and Tennessee, maybe. But I mean, unless you're a very small group of teams, you're looking at Baylor basically going, we have to beat Soto, we have to beat Lah, we have to beat Bass, and then we got to find another one, whether that's Dubs or somebody else. Now, I don't think Florida's saying that, because Florida's going, hey, Ben can beat Adrian. They can win anywhere, but there aren't, there's only a couple teams that can say that. But that's pretty much the recipe when you're looking at Baylor is you've got to beat those 3 guys that you just pointed out. You got to beat Soto, you got to beat Lah, you got to beat Bass. And then you go find another point. And that's the only way you knock off Baylor, right?
You're right. Michigan doesn't think that way, because they're like, hey, Styler's going to have match point on Boitan, and Beatty's going to beat Mizuchi, and we're going to win at 5 as well. You're right. We don't think that way. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, but no.
This is where Maddie, by the way, Parsa would jump on me. So if you need to take your swing, now's your moment.
I guess I got to come up with a little Baylor. I mean, Soto, that guy's just a baller. I mean, you have to beat him, Chris. I mean, good luck in war for him. Sick and bears. Was that good?
That was good.
I mean, like Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12, right, Gruskin?
Yeah. But no, I mean, again, so talking about this Baylor team, I didn't mean to cut you off. They have it's true. Like their match calculus is very clear.
Yeah, it is. And I think, honestly, sure. I mean, they should, for regardless of draw, they should waltz into the quarters. And that should be the first time they potentially get pushed, right? Now, once you get into the quarters and you're playing another top 8 team, they might get pushed there. But, I don't think that match calculus becomes questionable in all likelihood until you get to the semis. Once you get into the semis, now all of a sudden, if it is, say, a Florida, and even if things change, any of those top 4 teams, now that match calculus can change, because Boitan could lose to somebody, or Mizuchi could lose to one of those guys. Prior to that, you're feeling really good about the fact that those 3 guys are going to win. And if you're Baylor, you just got to find one more on top of it.
Auburn would be the interesting one to me, because Nolan's been so good at 6, and it's like he can beat Mizuchi. And so that is a takeaway there. And then, again, they're pretty good at that number 4 spot as well. I think it's Mergit who's been playing there, but they've mixed things around a little bit. Like, that is an interesting round of 16 matchup just from like an individual match count. You're like, oh, Auburn's actually pretty good at doubles, pretty good at 2 spot. They can take one away from Baylor, and they're good at, again, welcome to NCAA tournament time, folks. We're talking matchups. We're talking calculus. That's how we've arrived. On the flip side, let's get to the TCU end of this equation. I mean, again, they had just beaten Baylor on the road. It's third matchup between these teams. Anything gives, and you look at the actual scoreboard between these two teams. Certainly, Juan Carlos Aguilar is going to think he had his third chances in the third set. None of us could watch this one because it was indoors at TCU. But hearing from Coach Woodson, he says Soto was just exceptional in the third. Again, Sander Jong's at 6-all in the third against Sven Lah. Famba gets a win over Boitan. This match is, TCU's right there. you look at I think for me, the biggest question is you look at the records and the stats for this TCU team. What are they going to do at the number, 5 and 6 single spots? It feels like Fernley is going to be at that number 4 spot. He's 6-3 there, 17-5 overall in the season. I think he's earned it. And again, Famba, Aguilar, Jung, Fernley, you feel really good about. Vives is going to be in the lineup. The freshman's 11-6 overall, 6-4 at the 4 spot, 4-2 at 5. The question is, where do you play him? And do you play Jirasek, who's 6-7? Do you play Maxted, who's 8-6? Do you maybe mix in Rule, depending on a matchup, who's 2-2? I know, Chris, you're going to say no to that. So I'll start with you, Parsa. What are you doing with the TCU 5 and 6?
Vives in, Maxted. Well, you already had Fernley, yeah. So those are the 3. Sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
Drusek.
It's tough. It's
and
tough.
Rule, at least he has experience. If it's a certain matchup, he's going to be comfortable coming in, won't get tight. But yeah, those are got it back. I was impressed with Max when I was in Seattle at indoors, well, until he choked for Scannon. But for a set and a half, he was looking good.
Yeah, he's so smooth, his game. And I do feel like that's a good point. Indoors, maybe that's when you'd throw Rule in the mix. Chris is like, no. So I'll give you the answer, Chris. What are you doing? 4, 5, 6. I mean, we saw how good Fernley was at 5 at the indoors, but I don't think you can justify putting, like, if he's below Vives in the submitted lineup, I'm not going to say a coach's name, but I know who's going to challenge. Like, I think we all know who's going to challenge right away. Like, I would challenge for sure. And so what would you do?
So Gruskin, you don't want to say anybody's name that rhymes with
no rhymes. No rhymes. No
jerk.
Yeah, we're not doing this. We're gonna get coached. Look,
that's a favorite of Gruskin's.
I'll say this. You know who else will challenge? Adam Steinberg and like Ty Tucker and everyone.
Well, and Husak if he was in the field. But I mean, but yeah, all these people were going, what are they talking about? And we're, it's just the guys that protest all the time. But no, I mean, yeah, if I could, absolutely, I'd put Vives back at 4 and play Fernley at 5, just from a points perspective. I don't think they're going to get away with that. You got to play Fernley 4. Definitely Vives is in the lineup, and it's really down to a question. It's not Rule. It's a question of, are you going to play? And at that point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter the lineup you submit, because you can play anybody at 6 once you put them in. You just pull them, right? So that at that point they can play. Situational, dependent upon who they're playing. It could be Maxted or it could be Jirasek. And that's, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that's what the lineup is for them.
Anybody can play at 6, so he could hypothetically fly in Alistair Gray, you're saying?
Well, anybody that had eligibility and didn't make a lot of money this year, maybe. But
WWTD, what would Tucker do? He would go Vives.
John McNally.
Yeah, no, Siebert. No, I mean,
what Parsa cracks me up though, because I've literally been waiting for these lineups to see if someone like, say, Sam Paul is going to all of a sudden go, hey, Rinky's still eligible. He didn't take all that money this year. Like, are we good? I would love to see one of these guys that didn't play at all this year show up on a lineup for NCAAs.
First of all, he could take all the ITF futures money and he still would have eligibility.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it could be possible. I mean, it's not going to happen, but it would be hilarious if we saw that show up in the lineups.
And they were just homeschooling the kids this online type
online
classes, keep them eligible.
You just need to be enrolled and taking classes. That's all. And not making more money than your expenses are, which is probably the case for Rinky.
I'm in. Yeah. Lock me in. That sounds like a plan to me. But again, Baylor 4-2 over TCU. I think these are both teams we have very much. I mean, if tier 1 means national title contender, unequivocally, these two teams, tier 1 teams, and obviously you look at the projected rankings, both of them also going to be top 8 seeds, host for the first 3 rounds of the NCAA tournament. Match of the tournament for me, probably Baylor knocking off Texas 4-2, because that match got scrappy between those two teams. And you look overall in the end for Baylor, again, there were Three 3-set matches, both of them going, two of the three going the way of Baylor, one of them unfinished. Was a 6-6 win for Bass over Waldeeb as well. You know, Bailey, Harper getting wins in straight sets for the Longhorns, and most notably for Texas, no Micah Braswell over the course of the past weekend. Spizzirri now also all the way up to the #1 singles spot. And by the way, if Spizzirri had 2 wrists, he would be the guy. Like, he is absolutely in the conversation for that. But look, on paper, this Texas team remains as talented as any roster in the country. We're a full 4 months in. May is around the corner. They're not healthy entering the NCAA tournament. I think one of the biggest questions is, A, what is their submitted lineup going to be? And B, what are the Longhorns going to do? Because I was at the indoors. They took it to Florida. You saw it as well, Parsa. And this team has a nucleus that all made the national semifinals last year. And Chi-Chi's a national champion, part of that 2019 squad. Where are you with Texas entering May?
Your coach just texted me. He got me shaking my head at your Spizzirri comment. Just to clarify, I just can't believe he's playing that good with one wrist. Not that he wouldn't be the guy. He saw him in person at the USC and Pepperdine matches, and it's just like, wow, the guy's literally just slicing and then maybe a little flick passing shot once in a while.
And it works.
Yeah, it works. And Pierre-Yves was injured that trip, and now that he's back healthy, I mean, Braswell's still not there, but I mean, CMR is 5th year. Woldeeb, you can count on him outdoors. I mean, yeah, the lineup's just Chi-Chi, like you said, his experience, clinched versus USC in their comeback win.
And then Cleve, who's the heart and soul at 6, who like you might like at 6 more than anyone else at that spot.
Even beat Matt's boy Mizuchi.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, and beat him comfortably, like straight sets, 3 and 4. And again, was right there with Goodger at the national indoors, and right there with, I forget who he played against TCU. And again, he was so banged up at that point of the at the national indoors, and has been banged up all season long. Look, Chris, again, everyone on this Texas team is nursing some sort of injury. That said, they are still, in my mind, the biggest wild card entering this NCAA tournament.
Yes, I mean, super dangerous. Your question about lineups will be interesting. I mean, you can't, given where they finished in the Big 12 tournament, you can't slide anybody more than a spot. The question is, where the heck was Braswell on the lineup that was submitted before they pulled him, right?
I mean, 1 or 2.
And well, the thing is, there's a little loophole there where you can slide somebody out even more than a spot due to, injury, if you will. But yeah, I would expect that you would see him 1 or 2. So that probably means just take the lineup they played, and you got Spizzirri and Braswell in some order at 1, 2, and everybody else slides down. But yeah, barring getting healthy, and that is excluding Spizzirri, because we know he is what he is, and he's doing what he's doing with one wrist. Yeah, I mean, it's like, like Parsa's motion there. But people don't understand how hard that is. It's like looking at Kwiatkowski going, stop hitting him forehands. Okay, you tried to stop hitting him forehands. You can't do it. Like, you hit him into the backhand corner, and he runs around it and hits a forehand winner. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They're definitely the wild card, like you say, because they've got the talent for a team that's going to be like, that it's going to be super dangerous, because they're outside the top 10, right? They're going to be like, I'm not looking at the rankings right now. What are they, 13-ish, something around there? They're, for a team that's like 13, that means they're going to draw like a 4 potentially. That's an Ohio State matchup. And you don't want to see a team like Texas, if you're that highly ranked in your, super regional round.
Right now they're 12. They would take on number 5 Tennessee. That would be the Battle of the Orange. That match gets loud. That would be a fun one. No, I mean, again,
Orange Battle, the real UT.
Yeah, exactly. Spizzirri somehow 10-6 overall, 7-1 at the 3 spot. Braswell's 11-4 at number 1, 16-5 overall. I mean, again, how healthy are they? Like, if they're healthy, I'm not crossing them off. They can absolutely beat Tennessee. They can beat anyone in the top tier. They beat Florida at the indoors. They've proven it. Now, can they do it 4 consecutive matches from the Sweet 16 all the way home. Can they stay that healthy for that long? Only God knows. So we'll find out over the course of the next week. But again, to wrap up our thoughts here on the Big 12, 5 of 6 teams getting in. Texas Tech likely to sneak in to the NCAA tournament. Right now, Texas Tech currently number 43 overall, but projected to be number 41 in the next rankings. Oklahoma State is the only Big 12 team that's going to miss out on the tournament this year, and they finished 12-12, and they've had some roster issues since the season has ended that we don't have to talk about here right now. Year 1 for DT, success or failure, Chris?
I don't know that I'd really call it. It definitely wasn't a success,
but it definitely wasn't a failure considering there were 2 people.
Definitely wasn't a failure either. I think it was, so I don't think it really falls into either category. They had high moments and they had low moments, for sure. But I don't know that it was necessarily either. I think it was just sort of acceptable for where they were.
I think when you look for the Oklahoma State team, again, considering they had 2 members of the roster, if that, at the end of November. And, again, it was a really tough Big 12 schedule for them. I'm sure they'd like that Texas Tech match back, which they dropped 4-3, and that might be the difference. 4-3 at Oklahoma as well. But, after losing their first 4 matches of the season, they ripped off a 5-match win streak. And this team was legit. They were NCAA tournament quality. Down the season's home stretch, just got off to too slow of a start. I say it's a small win for Coach Taylor. What say you, Parsa?
I mean, DT, you got to trust him. He's got it handled.
Yeah, exactly.
Beecroft didn't get eligible, which was tough, similar to Bicknell played for another team in the fall. But you bring back your top few guys. Pinney has incredible season. Guy, actually, I think he was one guy I didn't give a bomb to, so shout out to him for having a great season. And still got Zink obviously at the top, Leighton Allen, you got bringing back Garcia, good transfer, you bringing back those guys. And then so they've got some money right now in recruiting. And I think you just trust the process, similar to like a Grand Chen at SMU or Adam Shackley at Pepperdine. You just trust the process. They didn't have the greatest starts to their coaching tenures as head coach either, but you trust the process and look where they are now. SMU, amazing season, conference title, Pepperdine, conference title last year and top 25 team. And they're hosting NCAAs in a few years. You got all those resources at Oklahoma State as Power 5 school. You can recruit. I mean, we see Chris Young do it. You can recruit studs there, and it's Stillwater. So you got DT, and you see some on the pro path. You get JC or Ty on the phone, and you're like, look where DT got us. And I think I'm not sure necessarily it's tough success failure, but I would say it was progress. So you're on the right track.
Yeah, or Richie. Call Richie too. No, I well said. I have nothing more to add there. So with that in mind, let's move on to our next conference final, and we'll go a little quicker through this next one here, as Chris and I broke a lot of it down last week. But this is the conference of Parsa's specialty, and this is the SEC, where Florida completes the undefeated SEC season. They get a 4-1 win over LSU, 4-1 win over the Fighting Parsas, aka the Volunteers, and then a 4-0 victory over Kentucky in the final. I mean, Shelton rock and rolled all weekend long, and you look at what this team was able to do. Obviously, they take the doubles point in all 3 of these matches as well. And, again, when you look at the recipe for success over the course of the weekend, Shelton gets wins over Drexel, over Walton, over, I believe in his first match over LSU, as over Holman. There it is as well. And then, again, Rifus drops his match to Monday, which actually we'll get to in a moment. I don't think it's a bad loss for Rifus, but he goes 2-1 on the week. And, we see the return of Matthias Seymour back into the lineup. That's doing wonders. Josh Goodger starting to play better and better at the number 6 singles spot as well. I mean, I sent out a tweet earlier this week talking about how open things were in the NCAA field. Everything is wide open, except for the fact that the Gators are now the clear-cut favorites, right? Like, who's going to come in second? Who's going to be in the semifinals, the quarterfinals? That's all up in the air. But Florida will be one of those teams. That's unequivocal now, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, first of all, the whole, you talk about Rifus losing to Monday. The good news for Tennessee is Monday's back. I mean, we needed to see that he was back and completely healthy and ready to roll, and he's back. Now, on the Florida side, hell, they're not even worried about the fact that Riffice lost because the match was over before he lost.
Yeah.
I mean, he's looking around going, well, we're not losing the match. So
he also had his chances in the second set.
He was up a break.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the probably, no, granted, you should never take anything like that for granted. You shouldn't be looking around going, yeah, my teammates got it. This match is, we're not going to lose. But yeah, maybe another story. But no, you're not picking against Monday. I don't think probably, you'd be hard pressed to find a match where you're going to say, I'm picking against Monday at 2. You're probably going to favor him in every match. And then same thing for Riffice. And then when they play each other, that's the question. But yeah, Florida is, like you said, without a doubt, they should pretty much waltz into Champaign, into the final 8, at which point, and they're going to be the 2, so they'll get whoever 7 is, and who knows, that could get tricky. It could be Michigan, right? I mean, and I would not say, oh, they're going to waltz through a Michigan match. No, I'm not going to say that. That's where it could start to get tricky, but they should absolutely waltz into the final 8 in Champaign.
Are you fine with Seymour Goodger, Chris, before I go to Parsa for all?
Yeah, that was the other point I was going to make. We've questioned what that outdoor lineup is. I think for sure that's the outdoor lineup. And then, if we ever get to a point where weather's a problem and we move indoors, then Bonetto plays. But barring that, I think it's Seymour Goodger 5-6.
Seymour 6-1 overall in the year. Just hasn't been asked to play many singles matches. Of course, he and Andrade 16-4 overall in doubles play. You've got Josh Goodger, who's 11-4, but 8-2 in his last 10. So we know about the Florida side of the equation. Obviously, if you have any thoughts to add, please do, Parsa. But let's talk about Tennessee, which to me is actually the biggest storyline coming out of this weekend. Johannes Monday is back. I mean, to earn the victory over Riffice the way that he did, to earn the victory over Henning the way that he did in the quarterfinals as well. And, again, what was the match calculus for this Tennessee Tennessee team early in the season? It was doubles. It was Monday. It was Mitsui. It was find one more. Obviously, Walton plays a bunch of really good matches and loses in straights to Shelton, but, gets a good win over Hamish Stewart. And
wait, you said Wells lost to Ben?
Or unfinished. Was that, but he was down, correct?
Forrest, no, he was up 2-1 the third.
He was up 2-1 in the third. So again, he's the guy. Right. See, this is why we have you here, Parsa. This is what I need. And that's a good man impression once again. Again.
Now he doesn't have to text us that your calls are horrible. He can tell us right on live in person.
That's what I've wanted for a generation. It's just the producer in the background who yells at me. And that's Westhoff. You guys just can't hear it. Anyways, that's not true, Westhoff. You never yell at me. Sorry, I'm going to get distracted here. Anyways, you look at for this Tennessee team, the recipe. Walton's going to fight at that number 1 spot. Monday, going to do his thing, and he looks back. Mitsui's up to the number 4 spot, but the kid's just not losing. I mean, again, a fantastic weekend for Mitsui. He gets a straight set win against Georgia over Trent Bride, which, I mean, again, Bride hasn't played the best this year, but on the road, that's a great win for Mitsui. He wins the first set against Andrade. Now, ultimately loses that match in 3, but you look for this Tennessee team, they're going 3 sets at 4. They're going 3 sets at 5, 3 sets at 1 with Florida. That's a much more competitive match than the 4-1 scoreline would indicate. Where are you confidence-wise with this Tennessee team? And don't give me the clouded, I don't want to hear the fan take. I want to hear the real Parsa Nemati speak here.
I'm just going to throw in a quick Matt take for Florida that the Bears are probably happy the match is in Champaign this year. And we were all at that match in Gainesville. Those Florida fans can bus over from Gainesville, get that home court advantage. So that would be a little more.
What's a tougher ticket, Gainesville to Champaign or Waco to Champaign?
Ooh.
IT guy.
At least Champaign, you could connect to Chicago.
No matter what, you're going through Chicago.
Waco, you probably fly into Houston.
Yeah.
And then you drive over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so where are you with this Tennessee team? And again, here the other caveat, Prada 0-2 against Georgia and Florida, which were the 2 most relevant matches at that number 6 single spot. Prada, Gannon, what are you doing at 6? Where are you with this team?
Some optimism there at 6. Goodger had big leads both sets, 5-0 in the second, and then got back to 5-3. And then first set Prada actually could have won, was 5-2 then, I believe. Then got to 5-all, had Love 40. And then once Goodger got that, then he broke the next game. And obviously Waltz, like we've talked about, is just a rock, and versus anybody he plays, he's got a good chance, if not the favorite. Dubs is solid. Wallner and Monday was just their first loss. You lose that doubles point just in a breaker. Hud and Mitsui, we've seen them all year. They've been great at 2 dubs. They could be 1 dubs of many teams, and Waltz and Harper finally have got back into form after kind of a slow start for the Natty champs. And Jomo, obviously at 2, is just continued a stellar start from his freshman year and been great at 3, great at 2 again. Hud transfer in, and indoors was really good all season. Now outdoors kind of continued that. And like we've said, Mitsui is just a beast. Ran out a little versus 5th-year Andrade. And he was just a little too clutch at the end. Few deuce points at 1-2 and 1-3, and probably a little scoreboard watching, seeing Waltz down in the breaker at 1. Diaz was actually down a break 1-3, got it back to 3-all when the match ended up. I wanted to kind of see how that match would ended up with Seymour. So yeah, I mean, Jomo's back. You guys were doubting them. You guys were privately doubting them, but they're, especially that A&M match, how that felt good. You 3-0 down, and you guys are rubbing it in, but came back and won that. And I'll just love to see Prada win for Chris, and then he'll just, if you're there in person, Chris, I'll make sure he gives you a big fist bump.
It was never me. It was the professor who doubted him, Parsa. Let's be clear.
Give the guy a break. He's still banged up. You just gotta, on any given day, pop some pills in, and he's a warrior. He'll go out there and fight for you.
I agree.
I've done everything I can, even secretly talking to his fellow Portuguese players on the Liberty team to smash him so word gets back to him and motivate him a little. I mean, anything I can do to get Prada going. Yeah, I've tried to help.
It's for the troops. I get it. Here's the thing. Walton and Harper are back. They are that good again. They're the best doubles team in the country right now. Eye test says it. Numbers say it. They are that good again. And when you can put Hud and Mitsui at 2, they're just that much better. To your point, yes, Wallner and Monday lost a match. Look at how they bounced back, though, as a duo. Look at how they found their rhythm again. That's their first loss on the season. Here's the thing. If Tennessee can get Hud, Diaz, and who's ever playing 6, they just need 1 win. Really just need 1 win out of those 3 positions, because you feel like Walton, Monday, Mitsui are going to go 2-1, and you feel like you're going to get the doubles point against 90, honestly, against every team you play. That's why you can't cross off this Tennessee team, because their pathway to 4 is very clear. 2-1 in 3 spots, 1-2 in the other 3 spots, win doubles. And you can see it. And we saw it at the National Indoors. And that's why I refuse to write off this team, because that 4-1 loss in the semifinals to Florida was not a bad loss by any stretch of the imagination. And they beat Georgia in Athens on the road. And to do that in the fashion that they did, that's what a tier 1 team does. Now, again, Florida 4-0 win over Kentucky in the final. I don't think we learned anything new about the Wildcats in particular. My match of the tournament, Auburn, who knocks off South Carolina, prevents South Carolina-Kentucky Part 3. Auburn, a 4-2 victory over the Gamecocks. And, I mean, again, you look at how this Auburn team managed to do it for them, as they have all season long, continue to have success in just different spots throughout the course of singles, because, of course, as the bucket hat comes on for Chris, Auburn dropped doubles in this match against South Carolina. And that's a spot where they have been so successful throughout the course of the year. And yet, for this team, that they were able to do what they needed to do, which is, of course, if you play South Carolina, you got to take 5 and 6. Will Nolan, 3-set win over Casey Houle, Spencer Gray, straight set win over Carter Morgan. They then take 2 of the top 4. And in particular, Tyler Stice comes through, the junior, a 4-6, 6-1, 6-3 win over Daniel Rodriguez to clinch the victory. I mean, this is the sort of win head coach Bobby Reynolds has been searching for since he took over this Auburn program. And you look at what this win does for the Tigers. Are they going to be top 16 at the NCAA tournament? No, but you look for this Auburn team now. They're going to finish the season top 25. They're number 24 in the current rankings, 24 in the projected rankings. They finished this season 20-10 in overall. I mean, again, outside of the Power 5, Auburn was that next best team. They were better than Texas A&M. They were that good all year long. And pretty much this entire nucleus, except for Tad McClain, is coming back next season, Chris.
Yeah, there's no lack of younger talent for these guys, right? And And I love, I had tweeted out to such a fact, and I can, because it was only 7 seconds long, I can pretty much recap the entire video. As soon as that match ended, I get a DM on Twitter from Tyler, or from Coach Huchiar, videoing Tyler, saying, "Chris, I love everything you do for college tennis, but that win was for you, Chris. That win was for you." Because I had literally called him out the night before as the only point that you're really not looking like that you're going to win against South Carolina, against Rodriguez, and he pulled it out. But yeah, I mean, they're a dangerous team because they play good doubles. And when you have a better than average chance at winning the doubles point, and then you put what they've gotten, like you said, like Nolan's been almost unbeatable down there. They've got guys in spots that are really hard to beat. It's a good team, and it wasn't shocking. Both teams missing their 4, Lambling out for South Carolina, and Raul out for Auburn. And they played him, and I think we've had those concerns, switching over there to South Carolina. We've had the concerns for South Carolina, 5 and 6 questionable. Now you pull Lambling. Now your 4 through 6 are questionable, and Auburn took advantage, and they did what they needed to do. And if you want to be at that level, that's where Auburn's trying to get. That's what you have to do, and they did it.
So with that in mind, to both of you guys, and we'll do this question quickly. How many SEC teams reached the round of 16? Florida, sure. Tennessee, sure. Kentucky, sure. South Carolina, Georgia, I don't know where you're at with Georgia. South Carolina, I still feel pretty good about. Georgia, Auburn, A&M, like, are we getting over? I'll put the over under at, is it 5? Is it 5.5? Over under? That's obviously the number. You taking over or under, Chris?
Well, it's 5 for sure. Georgia's making it for sure. Georgia's going to host, like, probably
Stanford?
Florida State's probably the 2 at Georgia, and then like Georgia State and East Tennessee State. That's who I'm projecting as
that's ridiculous.
Georgia makes it out of there, no problem.
That's a
Gruskin doesn't want to see the dogs in Champaign.
No, that would be absurd. Like, first of all, because like I think only one of USC, Stanford, and Arizona is going to get a top 16 seed. If 2 of them get it, that's one thing. But if only one of them gets it, and all of Pepperdine, San Diego, and those 2 teams are stuck out west.
2 of them will host for sure, right, Chris? USC, Stanford, Arizona.
2 hosts for sure. That's right. It's USC and Arizona. I don't think Stanford can even get
head to head.
Okay, so USC that's better. But like, you're telling me Pepperdine, San Diego, and Stanford are all going to be stuck out west, and not one of them is going to get to come to the East Coast just for the sake of parity? Like, that's ridiculous.
San Diego, probably USC, Pepperdine, Arizona, and then Chris, Stanford, Texas school.
Yep, Pepperdine or San Diego. One of them goes to USC for sure because it's a drive. Beyond that, it's their flight. Stanford's a flight no matter where they go, so you can place them anywhere.
Put them at Georgia. Give us the matchup we deserve.
I'm trying to look where I've got them. I've got them actually at Harvard.
Okay, that's fine too.
Battle of intellectuals.
A brutally horrible field, because the only other 2 schools that can get to Harvard and actually drive and keep the driving limits down are Monmouth and Fairleigh Dickinson.
That's good. No, losers of Stanford, Harvard have to go public for grad school. That's the punishment.
Chris, does the rule still exist where you can't go to the same school 2 years in a row?
That's never been a rule. And I was talking to that with another coach out in your area today. It's not been a rule. It might have been a sort of unwritten rule, but and I talked.
I think we talked to the same coach. We were wondering the same thing.
Yeah, Shannon at Slam Tennis, who used to do this projection. And I remember distinctly one year when he ran it and took that into account, and then found out, no, that didn't happen at all. And they actually, I think what might happen is if everything else is equal, meaning they can keep it to the same number of drives and swap, like for this year, Pepperdine, San Diego, one of them goes to USC. The other one is technically a flight no matter where they go. Because Pepperdine went to USC last year, they might say, well, in that case, we won't send the same team there twice, and we'll put San Diego at USC. Because
rankings wise, they're all kind of pretty similar. USC, Arizona, and Pep USC, just a few spots separating both.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, again, these are all things to keep in mind. And with that in mind, let's go over to the West Coast and the Pac-12 because It was a weird weekend. USC wins the title. Washington wins our hearts. Obviously, USC 4-0 win over Cal, 4-0 win over Stanford, 4-1 win over Washington. This USC team is looking like a top 16, top 8 sort of caliber team. And obviously, they were extraordinarily young going into this year with Merrick and Colby and Mock and all of these new pieces they were working into their lineup. And Dostanek taking over that number 1 spot from the Kookie Monster, establishing himself as the guy at the top of the lineup. He's had success doing it, but Bradley Fry and Ludwig and all these other guys in the lineup, Ryder Jacksons of the world, trying to find out where they all fit. Well, clearly it all came together this weekend. Let's do this quickly. We talked about it last week. I don't have much to add with the Trojans. Like, they are your standard definition. They are a good team. I don't know if they're great, but Chris, they're a good team.
Oh, they're a good team. They will have, I mean,
they're not going to lose 4-0 to anyone.
No, and in all likelihood, they're, because of the aforementioned, preference, say that Parsa mentioned, to not send the same team there two years in a row. If you can, they probably avoid Pepperdine and get San Diego. I think they'd rather see San Diego than Pepperdine. I mean, obviously Holmgren and Dostanek is going to be a battle up top, but I think down low, they would probably rather see San Diego. I don't think they have any problems getting out of their home site. The question is now, as if you end up at, say, 14, where they are, although they're back 14 with Harvard, 15, they lost that match, did they not? Mm-hmm. So they might
USC Harvard.
Yeah.
At kickoff weekend, they won.
They meaning Harvard lost that match.
Yeah. So USC, and I'm a one off. So they are 13, let's say. So if they're 13, you're drawing the 4. That's a tough spot. That's Ohio State. I think it gets really tough after that. If you've got to go on the road, or actually 4 would be Baylor. They got to go to Baylor. It's tough there, but they should make it out of their host region. No problem. Get to that super regional weekend where they're traveling. It's a really good team. Tons of talent. Like with a lot of the new guys, I would still say, like we've said all year, from national title contenders perspective, a year away still.
Yeah, Colby's 18-4, incredible. Mock 17-6, incredible. Again, they're both freshmen, and Merrick, 7-3. He's been hot and cold, and
and he's coming back now. So
yeah, Fry's 10-10, and Wistrade 10-6. Again, they've got options. This team has points, and they've got recipes, and they're healthy. They're clicking on all cylinders. They showed it this weekend. They were not the story, though. Washington came into the weekend on the bubble in that 42 to 48 range of the rankings. And the Huskies, they do it the hard way. They beat Arizona. They knock off UCLA 4-3. They then also get a win in the semifinals, over UCLA, 4-3, to advance all the way to the final, where they're ultimately stopped by USC. Now, again, they needed to beat Oregon in the first round. They did. They needed to beat Arizona in the second round. They did. They needed to beat UCLA, and they get a 4-3 victory over the Bruins, come back from a break deficit in the third. Parsa, were you at Ojai? And if not, still, your reaction to Washington and just their run this weekend?
I went Thursday for the quarterfinals, and that was electric atmosphere, that Arizona match. And the way the Ojai set up 1, 2, 3, 4 are like upper courts. You can't even see 5 and 6, so you got to go lower. And the last matches were down below, so everyone is just huddling around the fences, all 4 sides around these 2 courts. And the little Frenchie 17-year-old came up clutch. I mean, I'm sure he knew what was on the line. They talked about it. You beat Oregon your 3rd time this season, your rival up there in the Northwest, and then you get the regular season champs, who are always game. And it's neutral, so you don't have that Arizona's tough place to play, but neutral. Washington backs against a wall. The women's teams, they're cheering, and they came up clutch when they needed to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the big news, because this is the storyline. For the first time in program history, the UCLA men's tennis team will not be participating in the NCAA tournament, as they're ultimately knocked off again by 4-3. That was very much a cross-off match in the Pac-12, and UCLA going to finish the year 13-12, 49 right now in the projected rankings. I mean,
A lot of bad
Disasters.
luck.
Yeah, it's just like disaster's not even the right word. Just everything that could break against this team did this season. I mean, Chris, your thoughts on Washington's run and your final takeaways from a Pac-12 season that, like, I still don't know how good was this conference this year. Like the NCAA tournament will tell, because there's a world where USC, Arizona, and Stanford all make it to the Sweet 16. And now if you have 3 Sweet 16 teams, it's like, well, that's probably more than a lot of the other conferences. At the same time, like, they may be the 14, 15, and 17 seed that all sneak in, and they may have 0 quarterfinalists.
I mean, I think it's highly likely. I'd love to see the betting lines on those 3 making it. USC and Arizona are going to host and should make the Sweet 16. Now, if the bracket I've drawn up holds and say Stanford goes to Harvard, you guys tell me who you picking.
Stanford, if it's outside.
Harvard.
So yeah, so we it's probably a legit 50-50 in that match, right? But Arizona and USC should hold. So it's very possible. You might have a 50% chance or slightly less, because obviously there's a chance that Arizona or USC lose, but pretty close to a 50% chance that you get 3 Pac-12 teams in the Sweet 16. But yeah, I mean, what a great run for Washington, and what a horrible end for UCLA. UCLA up 4-1 in the third in the match they need to make the tournament. I've tried to run every scenario possible from all the other tournaments. I'm doing it manually, so I can't say for sure. There's no way I can get UCLA up to 47, which puts them 2 out. I don't think there's any way that they can make it in. It would take basically a committee miracle at this point, to name them in, but it's not going to be on ranking. So yeah, but Washington, what a run for them. Just to, they knew they had to win that first match, and then they get to Arizona and they're like, well, we got to beat Arizona too. I mean, that was tremendous. So, granted, you still lose the 2.5 bet, but props for the sentiment, because they made a run.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I disagree with you, but that's fine because they made the NCAA tournament. So I think we all know in the end who was right on that one. All right, last one. ACC, Virginia continues their winning ways, captures the ACC crown. 17 consecutive victories for UVA entering May following their 4-0 wins over Florida State, Louisville, and then they hold on 4-3 win in the final against North Carolina. North Carolina takes the doubles point, but in the end, it's Iñaki Montez with the 3-set victory to clinch. They also got wins from Von der Schulenberg, from Getz in 3 sets. Straight set win from Gianni Ross, who continues to rock and roll at that number 6 spot as well. I was mocked earlier in the season when I suggested Barbatzer might end the year at the number 5 singles spot. Nevertheless, oh my God, look where he is in their lineup in this ACC tournament. Again, this result had more in my mind to do about UNC than it did the Who's. But Parsa, my question to you: where are you with UVA?
Shout out. What you got? Cernak just locked there at 1, and then I tuned into that breaker. Shout out ACC Network. It was nice. It was streamed. So I was breaking. Okay, I got to tune in now.
Yeah.
It was that Pepperdine Santa Clara match. I'm like, let me just go pull this up on my phone. And then tough one for Seguin went down in the breaker. And then I think Coach Pedroso said it best. He was like, I wasn't really that worried. It's Iñaki Montez. He's going to come through.
Yeah.
Bots are down to 5. What is it? I think he's barely over 500. So yeah, shout out to you on that take. A lot of hard work to get him in that business school, and he's on a lot of money. So hopefully he can prove himself in the tournament, come up clutch for the boys. Johnny Ross, just the 5th-year senior now, rock at 5. Great to see him. Almost didn't come to college tennis and still be in college and still playing well for the top 10 team. And then you got, obviously, what do you guys call him? Dr. Vaughn, is he
Doc
Dr. Vaughn, or Henry's actually older? But
yeah, that's Doc Vaughn Sr.
Doc Vaughn Sr. Okay, so Doc Vaughn Jr. 3-setter, gets 3-setter. And those 3 sets weren't even close, 6-2 and 6-1. So yeah, I mean, who's are always right there. I mean, they're going to fight. And ACC, Wake took that loss early. And like I agreed with you, UNC just proved you guys were kind of doubting them maybe earlier, but look where they are now.
Yeah, no, Cernak's a primetime player. And again, he gets a massive win over Rodash, has a very strong case to be named ACC Men's Player of the Year. I think, Kiger played his tail off to even take that first set over Von der Schulenberg, but obviously Jeffrey steadies the ship after that. Again, Kiger's a primetime performer. Seguin on the right day can beat anyone. On the wrong day, he can lose to anyone, but he's a piece. If Cernak's going to keep playing this well, I mean, you never know what you're going to get from Zap. Peter Murphy is everything you want out of a number 6 singles player. This UNC team they played its way to a top 16.
Don't forget about Anuj.
No, that's another who earned a huge victory over Barr. And so, again, this team played its way to a top 16 seed. They beat NC State twice by 4-3 score lines to ultimately secure that spot. And, again, I think the Tar Heels deserve it, are deserving of that top 16 seed. I think they proved it. I also think you look at teams like Duke and Miami and Notre Dame, not NC State, but those other top ACC, or not NC State or Miami or Louisville, who were strong throughout the year. But some of those other ACC teams fell away. The Tar Heels did not. They took care of business, Chris. And I know it's a funky bunch of parts, but this team played in the competitive moments of this match like a team that just won a national indoor title last year and like a team that has that institutional know-how. I was really impressed with the Heels over these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everybody knows we all knew who was at the top of the lineup, and we kind of early in the season, we poked fun a little bit, if you will, at the fact that they were gonna struggle because of down low. That down low has done well for them lately. The Liebermans, the Murphys, the Watanis, et cetera, have been good. And absolutely they deserve the top 16 seed that they've got. On the same hand, if you're a non-top 16 team and I ask you, pick the site, where do you want to go? There's no question everybody's picking there, right? I mean, that just because you think, hey, we know they've got Cernak up top. Even Ben's been so. And after that, not tons of experience. Yes, they've come on at the end of the year, but not a ton of experience in those guys. Certainly NCAA level. You look at Zapp and Murphy and Watani and Lieberman. You're like, hey, those guys are all pretty. This is new to them too. I'll take them, but they absolutely have earned it and deserve where they got. Certainly, it was nice to get to play Georgia Tech and not Wake Forest there. That was a good benefit as well. But a good run for them, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do. They're dangerous. I just don't think they're that dangerous. There's just too much inexperience at the bottom of the lineup.
Yeah, all right, that's completely fair. Well, again, I think this UNC team is going to be fun to watch. Again, it's going to be interesting to see them play as they did against UVA with nothing to lose, right? Where they're the clear-cut underdog and they swung freely. When they take a doubles point, they've just got pieces everywhere. So, they're not a team I'd want coming on the road swinging freely against me. Just too many guys with too much big match experience. Shout out to Georgia Tech, who makes a run here, obviously gets the massive win over Wake Forest, gets into the semifinals, but ultimately too little too late for a team that had some pieces, Martin McDaniel and such, just ultimately under 500 and therefore not going to be able to get into the NCAA tournament. I mentioned it, Duke, Miami, Notre Dame, they're limping their way into postseason play, all of them struggling in the conference tournament. We talked about it last week. Duke's lost to Clemson. That one's going to really hurt. Wake Forest loses to Georgia Tech. It's one loss. And again, this Wake team was really good throughout the course of the season. Now they're without Maroney right now. And, he's had injuries throughout the course of the year. And if you were to ask me, what are Wake's best 6? I would say, I don't know. Schneider should be in there. That's really all I got for you. I don't know after that. That said, overrated, underrated, properly rated. Where are you with Wake, Parsa?
Vinny at 1. Karamov hasn't exactly been probably what we all thought, but Maroney injured. They got the talent. Like you said, you don't know which 6 that they're out there. That's usually a good problem to have, but you want that problem in January, not exactly April 28th. So hopefully they can lock down. Nava's obviously solid, and they've got experience, but you've got to lock it down and see who wants to be out there and who you're going to count on.
Chris, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, which we'll find out.
Yeah, Chris, final word goes to you.
Well, my question, and Parsa may have some insight there. Is Maroney done? I mean, is he out NCAs, or is there a chance that he's that whatever the injury is, he can be back? I don't know.
Is that a no comment?
It's a wry smile from Parsa. So yeah, I mean, because my take on them is without him, yeah, there's no chance. I mean, yes, still a good team, but if we're talking title aspirations, no chance without a healthy Maroney in the lineup. But yeah, they're still a good team. Can they make a quarterfinal run? Absolutely, they can make a quarterfinal run. They might. They're projected to 8. They could get themselves into a host spot. It gets really tricky, and that's the spot that I'm most intrigued to see how it plays out. It looks like right now, Wake 8, Kentucky 9, South Carolina 10. But if that happens in the rankings, South Carolina owns the head-to-head over Kentucky, so they jump them and they go to 9. Then South Carolina owns the head-to-head over Wake, so they jump them and they go to 8. And South Carolina all of a sudden finds themselves at 8, even though they're 10 in the rankings. That's very possible. So that'll be interesting to see. And that would be a huge benefit, I think, for South Carolina to play that match at home and not have to go to Wake if that was the match.
Yeah. I mean, yes, well said. I have very little to add to that. So with that in mind, let's move on from the ACC, go to the best of the rest. And, again, here, there were some other non-Power 5 conference results that I thought were results that solidified kind of what we've seen throughout the course of the season. SMU completes an undefeated AAC season. They knock off Temple, USF, Memphis to win the conference tournament. Now you look at the AAC, Tulsa, USF, both very much on the bubble right now. Both should get in, but it'll be close still. They'll be sweating this weekend. Still, SMU, whether it's crawl or, the many pieces obviously NAF, the many pieces that they have, this SMU team is top 25 good, Parsa.
Yeah, the energy, saw them on the West Coast swing. And I mean, they're an army. It's 30 guys on the roster. I mean, they're all an army, and it's nice the group that they've kind of brought in. I mean, Neff wasn't really playing at UNC, and to see where his journey's taken him, and they're a great relationship with Coach Chen, and all the guys 1 through 6, even 1 through 30, they're gonna fight, and they're got a good few more years ahead of them. And this was just the start of it. So hopefully we'll see them continue being in the top 25. Well deserved for Coach Chen after a couple tougher years, but like we were saying earlier, you trust the process, and they undefeated conference season, and they didn't slip up in the tournament.
Yeah, well, and again, SMU head coach Corinne Chen joined me on the Cracked Interviews podcast this week. Chris, Tulsa, USF, they getting in?
Yeah, I think they do. It's a really tough road they've got Arkansas breathing behind them. Tulsa owns a win over Arkansas, so that's good for them. But it's hard to see the scenarios in ranking wise to get Arkansas around are really, really slim. There is a scenario where it happens, but it's not a likely scenario. So then you're kind of down to a committee decision at that point. And Arkansas would have to hope that the committee saw something to get them in over a USF. And because Tulsa owns the head-to-head, I don't see Tulsa dropping out, period. Tulsa should be in. And I think it comes down to a USF Arkansas conversation. And I would lean USF at this point even more. And yes, you can argue the SEC, but at the same hand, I would say a lot of people would argue, well, that's just the SEC bias. You're just throwing another SEC team in and ruling out a mid-major. I think, everything else looks pretty even. If they finish in the rankings that way, I can't find a reason that we would actually say, let's swap them from a committee standpoint. I think USF is in.
Fair. And again, other conference champions and NCAA tournament bids clinched. Middle Tennessee survives to win the Conference USA title, 4-3 over UTSA, 4-3 over Charlotte. They were one of many teams that clinched their spot. And here are just some of the teams that clinched NCAA bids over the course of the weekend. DePaul, Radford, UNC Wilmington, Monmouth, Western Michigan, East Tennessee State, New Orleans, Drake, Alabama State, Albion Christian, Georgia State, Fairleigh Dickinson. I don't think I'm missing. Oh, there is one more to miss. Congratulations to you, Chris, of course. The Liberty Flames capturing the ASUN Conference crown with wins over Kennesaw State, Florida Gulf Coast as well. With that in mind, Chris, final thoughts go to you.
I mean, Parsa couldn't have said it any better. Go in the case. Big
Mamba, baby. The Black
Tennessee
Mamba.
transfer. Yeah, big. I'm super happy to see him be able to make the tournament in his final year, especially last year after they made it and then didn't get to play because of COVID. So, and then in the oddest of circumstances, Florida Gulf Coast also doesn't get to play. And I think it was NC State, if I'm not mistaken, that ended up getting a bye there last year in the tournament because neither team could make it. But yeah, great weekend for the Flames. Super happy to see that. A bunch of good conference tournaments to finish up this weekend, and then we'll see Monday night on the selection show where everybody's going.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun. Well, with that in mind, let's get to our rankings, our selections, what our top 16 would look like here at Cracked Racquets. And again, Florida's still our number 1. Ohio State number 2, Baylor 3. We then have Michigan 4, TCU 5, UVA 6, Parsons Vols at 7, Kentucky 8, South Carolina 9, Wake 10, Georgia 11, Texas 12, USC 13, UNC worked their way all the way up to a new high of number 14, Arizona 15, Stanford 16. Now, we had a tie at the 4 and 5 spots. Thank you, Westhoff. He puts Michigan over TCU. That's very kind of you. We also had a tie at 7 and 8. Thank you, Westhoff, says Parsa. He puts Tennessee over Kentucky. Tennessee 7, Kentucky in that number 8 spot. The last tie was at 16. Stanford ultimately gets this spot. Now, I'm not sure who the other two teams were tied. We had a 3-way tie. Oh, Harvard, San Diego, Stanford, all earning votes for that 16th spot. Westhoff's a coastal elitist. I've said that for years. Wow. And so he ultimately goes with coastal elitist. He picks Stanford over Harvard and San Diego, which are, by the way, coastal elite. He goes, I gave it to San Diego last week. That's his justification.
Westhoff was probably following the
I was going to say, we finally get San Diego in there last week, even though I've been putting them 16 since March, and all of a sudden they disappeared and they did nothing to, Westhoff.
Westhoff saw some good fight in the 4-0 loss to USC.
Yeah, I would put it. I don't even know who I put, but this feels like a J. This just feels like, this screams J, and there's some Stanford bias. I'm just kidding, Jay, who I know is watching on our show here today. No, Parsa, you don't get the chance to chime into the rankings too frequently. Do you have any massive disagreements with what we've got up here?
No, for the most part, kind of matches the actual ranking. So by this time in the season, not too much. Maybe earlier in the season, there were some questionable rankings calls, but I think at this point in the season, it looks pretty solid.
Michigan too high, too low, just right.
We'll give it to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Chris.
No, I think they're they're basic. Everything's basically in the right spot.
It really does feel like we've hit that point of the year where it's like, this is what it is. Yeah,
it's kind of steady state now. Now you're picking at like 1 or 2 spots, not, oh, there's a team at 9 that should be 15 or 16. We don't have that anymore.
Georgia? No, I'm just kidding. All right. With that said, then, no, that's a joke. It's a joke. Shout out kid number 5. It's a 5th
Jamie
kid
on you. Congrats for the 5th kid on the way, Jamie. But yeah, we're sticking him on you.
Yeah, it's fair and balanced. All right. With that said, let's look at the week ahead because again, a couple conference tournaments to wrap up, and you can find the entire list on College Tennis Today, Bobby Knight's website, of course.com. You can also can you find them on College Tennis Ranks? I don't mean to be rude to you here, Chris.
I was totally distracted. What was that, Gruskin?
Okay, go to collegetennistoday.com. Chris has lost the right for the free plug there. All right, conference tournaments I'm watching most closely. Big Ten, winner, too close to call. Dark horse, Illinois, because I had to put someone there. What to watch, Michigan, Ohio State final, let's be honest. Although Illinois, Wisconsin, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I will be there in Madison for the match. I am pumped. That match is sneaky awesome. Like, that's for the nerds, but if you're a nerd, that match is for you. I'll start with you, Parsa. Who you got this weekend in Madison?
If the Buckeyes have fully recovered from their COVID, then we got to go with the Fighting Ty Tuckers.
Chris?
I will, before I pick the winner, I will say my sneaky good match is the Nebraska Northwestern match.
They're both sneaky good. Like
So-
it's not Michigan and Ohio State on day one. That's the answer.
Yeah, and in the end, Michigan, Ohio State neutral court. Gosh, can I do it, Parsa? Can I?
No, don't
No.
you dare. Don't you dare.
Like, I know, because I know how superstitious he is and that I might just screw him. Go blue.
Oh, you bite your, hold on. Let me get in a hunter's mentality here. That's right, boys. You see this? We will be repping this.
I mean,
all.
I legit picked 4-1 Ohio State in Columbus. That was good. I'll go 4-3 Wolverines on a neutral court.
You see that? You see that Block M synonymous across the globe with the leaders and the best? That's my pick for who's winning this weekend. I will be there. I learned a lesson from a wise man named Parsa Nemati, who says, on the days you're being partisan, don't go in cracked rackets gear. I will not be going in cracked rackets gear if it's a Michigan Ohio State championship. That much I can promise you. It will be full partisan attire. Although I still can't cheer because, like, Cannon's my guy. Like, I really like all, again, some of them I can cheer against, not all of them.
If you're going to be in Madison, I'm going to Ojai for West Coast. So, Chris, you coming out to San Diego for the Big West?
Yeah, someone's got to be ever. No, Jay will be there. No, Chris has to be there.
I wish, man. Gosh,
Yeah,
someone,
exactly.
Someone
Get
buy
on
me
the
a
bike
ticket.
now. If you get on the bike now, you can make it by the final.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, West Coast again, Pepperdine, San Diego, the rematch. I think I wrote Pepperdine as the winner just to get Parsa angry. Gonzaga, obviously your dark horse there. I mean, Pepperdine took the doubles point, but lost to San Diego the last time these two teams played. It's going to be really fun. You taking the Toros again, Parsa?
My roommate's on the Pepperdine team, so it'll be and I have past connections to USD, so it's both know a lot of guys on both teams. We unfortunately don't get a Vasa versus Vasa. I mean, I'll say just because Pepperdine knows as well, because his brother's on the younger Vasa is out due to illness, so he's not there. So that'll be a big loss for the Toreros, and the courts are a lot faster in Ojai than at USD a couple weeks ago, and waves are not coming from indoor altitude BYU the 2 days before. So, but USD, I mean, Holmgren, like we've talked about Holmgren, and they dropped the doubles point versus Pepperdine, but USD's only lost 3 doubles points all year, and that's not exactly Pepperdine's best point. Holmgren, De Jong rematch should be fun, and down the line, it'll just be who wants it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just who wants it more. We'll see.
Chris?
Yeah, for the reasons that Parsa mentioned there, especially with doubles, I find it hard to get away from San Diego. Of course, I love Coach Schachterly. It's nothing personal, but yeah, I've got to take the Toreros in this match.
All right. I'm not taking it personally, I promise. And then, of course, Big West, UCSB, Hawaii, Cal Poly, all in the mix. It's going to be a fun weekend of action. And again, our final weekend. Next week, folks, we will have the NCAA tournament draws in front of us. And with that in mind, that'll do it for this week's edition of The Deciding Point. Now, a massive thank you to our special guest, Parsa Nemati, the man behind Parsa Bombs, the original college tennis beat reporter, and a man who makes all of our lives more enjoyable as tennis fans. Parsa, where can we follow all of your work? What are you up to, my friend? What should we be doing to support you?
Appreciate the kind words. Awesome to be on. Matt, if you feel you need to take any more weeks off, let me know. Jump in. Twitter, you got me, Parsa_Nemati. We'll probably be doing some more coaching announcements as the summer coaching carousel rolls on, and then the portal hopefully is as we get as much action as basketball and football. I mean, there's some bombs ready to go. We're just waiting for some seasons to end, and we could do some transfer bombs. So look out for those.
No, looking forward to it all. Of course, every coach right now going to be hitting up Chris Halioris as they look to see, are we in? Are we not? What's our seating? Where are we heading? And all that information available at collegetennisranks.com. Of course, a shout out to our friends at SwingVision and Turner. You can learn more about SwingVision by clicking on the link in the description to this show. Of course, you can learn more about Turner by emailing sales@uniquesports.com. A shout out, as always, to our super producer, Daniel Westoff, on the ones and twos, who makes all of this content possible. Again, Next week, NCAA tournament draws coming up. We're going to change up the schedule. I think we're going to go women's draw preview Tuesday, men's draw preview Wednesday, mega mailbag and fun podcast for all of you listeners on Thursday. I tell you all this. I also tell this to Chris Halioris for the first time, so he can schedule that accordingly as well. But with all that said, for the fantastic Parsa Nemati, the exceptional Chris Halioris, our super producer Daniel Westoff, our friends at SwingVision and Turner, from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Gentlemen, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
He knew what to do. Let's go, and we will.
I mean, there was a brief moment I was gonna be like, it's a mini break, but I'm like, this was pretty long, so I'll say great shot.
I love
Don't
it.
let that fool ya.
Yeah, leave it in, and we will see you all next time. Thank you as always.